right, I'll start sharing my screen because we're starting off today talking about your academic choices. And why can't I see the controls for sharing my screen? There they are.
So Missy, before you get started too far, Neely and I are here today, Dr. Snook. We're going to be meeting with you and Bridget, I think, on Friday, talking about maybe delaying things for a year. I don't know whether or not to me, it seems like it still might be helpful to get some of these trainings so we're smarter. But that'll be one thing we can discuss Friday, what we should be doing right now.
Yes, so I'm not going to be able to make that meeting, which is what we were talking about, Ted going instead of me because I have a
Okay.
doctor's appointment. And I think that if you are thinking of, well, if you're going to request a second IY year, I do think that you should continue to come to these trainings so that you can have a better understanding of what is in store.
Coming up.
Yep.
Okay. Well,
All right.
that was my plan, unless you say, oh, you're wasting your time, just wait to do it next year.
No, it's never a waste of time.
Okay.
All right. See that Director Russell came on. Good morning, Bridget. All right, so nobody else has any other pressing questions, we can go on. So one of the things that you will have to do and start really contemplating, because decisions will have to be made by January of 2026, is around the academic options that you have, the mission goals that you want to propose. And I know you've already proposed mission goals, but proposing mission goals as part of the application process is just an exercise. It's not, you did not propose, nobody proposed, perfect goals. They might in theory work, but we'll need to craft them so that they're written appropriately. So they will require some type of work. And then your educational programs and how we take those out of your application and craft them in a way that the commission wants. And then we're also going to talk about the whole contract negotiation process. Now, why'd you stop? There we go.
Good morning,
So-
everyone. I'm not going to stay because I'm working on renewal reports. But if you, Missy, if you need me to jump on and answer questions at the end, just give me like a 10 or 15 minute notice and
Okay.
I'll join.
Thanks, Bridget.
Hope everyone is well.
All right. So I basically just told you what our agenda is. So first we're going to talk about the Public Education Commission's academic framework. So these are choices that are only afforded to PEC authorized schools. So because they're an authorizer initiative. So you hopefully remember you'll have 3 frameworks attached to your contract: the academic framework, the organizational framework, and the financial framework. And so the academic framework has these 3 areas: 1A, which is the overall school performance; 1B, which is the subgroups. So that's your Native kids, your Hispanic kids, your Anglo kids, your African American kids, your special needs kids, those types of subgroups. And then, as always, the overall participation, that you had the appropriate percentage of students being assessed. So those three options are what is going to provide the evidence of your academic growth and proficiency. So, you will still, your students will still be required to take the statewide assessment. They will always be required to take the statewide assessment, no matter what option you choose. And so in that, so your kids taking the statewide assessment, they will get ranked with this statewide accountability overall rank. And so if your school is ranked in the 76th to 99th percentile, you will be noted as exceeding. And then, as you can see, it goes down from there. And so, you know, we want our schools to be meeting, exceeding the statewide accountability overall. But depends on your student population, and it's hard to know until you get kids in, like, where are we going to be, right? You don't really know unless you've been testing similar kids to the ones that you think will be coming, for you to kind of have a strong sense of where your children are going to be testing out. So we look at that again at the overall, this is all of the kids in your school, and then we look at it by the subgroups. And I will send you guys the PowerPoint today. It's hard to get all of this in a comprehensive way into one slide and have it not just be hideous like this slide. So in 1A2, which is the subgroups, we're looking at the school's overall performance on the state accountability system and the supplemental proficiency and growth data from a PED approved or nationally normed some type of assessment. So this is where the school can say, yes, you'll look at the statewide assessment data, but then we're also going to give you supplemental data that really is going to help show growth and or proficiency. Now this can't be, this maybe test of competency, right? It can't be something that's just made up by you. It's got to be something that is, a lot of our schools are using NWEA or whatever they're calling iStation now. Gosh, I can't think of any of the other ones right off the top of my head. But typically those are the types of assessments that people have been proposing. And then they're providing CSD with that data annually so that we can tell the commissioners, where you are on track. So, again, and I have a complicated slide that I'll show you. So when you choose just option 1, that is we're just going to do the statewide accountability system and hope our kids are meeting or exceeding. If you feel like pretty confident that your kids maybe aren't gonna meet the goal, you would want to propose option 2, which is to have supplemental accountability data, and then hope that that supplemental accountability data will indeed show more growth measures and or proficiency. Proficiency is the gold standard, but if you don't think your kids are going to be proficient with the statewide assessment, I don't know what other assessment you might have that you think that they would show that they would be proficient with. So I've got in here, I've got the different ratings for exceeds, meets, so you have to be in the 26th to 50th percentile in the state accountability system, and based on the school's assessment and growth measure, at least 60% of the students meet one or more of the following proficiency or growth criteria. So it's not free. It's a lot of work to do option 2, to be it's a lot of data to track and report on annually. So that's also something you need to think about for the head administrator, making sure that that is built into their schedule and the expectations of their work, that they're going to be able to provide this data. Neither of you are available to do this option yet. Option 3 would be something that you could look into doing in your second contract term, if that makes any sense. Because option 3, your kids will still take the statewide assessment, but the public education commissioners will not look at that data. They will only look at the replacement data that you have agreed upon and negotiated with them. And so that is a huge lift, because you have to propose different assessments that will assess all of the things that are assessed in the statewide system. So you have to replace the English language arts, you have to replace the math, you have to replace the science, you have to have all of the different, testings, all of that part of the statewide assessment test that has to be replaced with a different assessment that the commission agrees with. So this is really for schools that are working with populations that really struggle to show proficiency and growth on the statewide assessment. So the schools that are doing that right now are really re-engagement high schools. So high schools that are getting kids who've dropped out back into school and hopefully graduated. Or schools that are have a very, very different high needs population, like Albuquerque Sign Language Academy. So it's really new, this whole system. We have not yet had schools that have gone through a renewal cycle with these choices, because we've just had the first cohort of schools really turning in just annual data for this. So you guys are in a little bit better of a position, because you'll have the time to be able to really see how other schools are going to be successful at it and do this successfully, and will have more understanding of how it all works, and the data, getting the data correct from everybody, but by the time you would be choosing an option 3. But you can choose option 2. You can propose to have a supplemental assessment. We have the schools that went through implementation year last year. I believe like Sun Mountain, which is in Santa Fe, they chose to do option 1 because they've never really had experience with any kind of testing, being a Waldorf-based group. So, they want to get some time under their belt and understand, how their kids are going to test. The school down in Sacramento and Alamogordo had wanted to go with option 1, but the commission decided that for high school students, you have to choose option 2, because with the statewide assessment, only 11th graders are assessed. So neither of you are going to be a high school, so you guys have the choice of being option 1. which to me feels like you have enough on your plate to be focused on and getting up to speed with, and really understanding your your staff and your student population, and get to a place where you kind of understand where people's where students' weaknesses are, where their strengths are. Um, but you know, it's completely up to you if you guys are like, no, we love NWEA and we want to do that as well. That's up to that's your choice and your prerogative. Just be aware that it's not just in theory, it is something you will have to be reporting to the CSD on annually.
Missy, I've got a kind of a philosophical question.
Uh-huh.
Obviously, we don't know what kids we're going to have. We may, hopefully we have more special needs kids. Do they look at kind of what the kids came in at and then kind of where they are now? That if you have kids that were always testing at the lowest 25 percentile and now you're up to 30 percentile, do they look at that and say, well, you're really doing bad, you're below expectations? Or do they say, oh, you're really doing good, they're better than what they used to be?
I kind of feel like they use a magic 8 ball, but
Okay. No, I'm just,
I
it just seems
because
like
that
it's
I mean, that's such a logical question, and I spent years thinking, because our kids are put into quartiles, right? The first, I don't know, 2 tests maybe they take, or maybe it's just the first test they take. You get branded with a quartile. You're either the first quartile all the way down to the fourth quartile. And I thought naively, like, cool, okay, so, I know that statistically you're always going to get kids in the school that are going to be at, uh, the third or fourth quartile, or the first, you're going to get them at some place. Um, and then they'll come to you and you'll sprinkle your magic dust on them and they'll rise up in the quartiles. And like you guys can report on, because statistically, like if you get somebody in at the fourth quartile and you work your magic with them and they improve, they grow, um, and now they're in the third quartile, but you still have more people coming in that are fourth quartile. So statistically, it averages out. And I was talking about that, and some head administrators like, that's not how it works. Okay. I think that once you're in the fourth quartile, you might always be in the fourth quartile, which I don't understand. One of the things that, to me, having run a private school where we don't have to do everything the state says, like, I had the ability to say to my teachers, this first grader, you want them to stay back, or do you want them to be socially promoted? We could socially promote kids if we felt that that was in their best interest, because with a Montessori method, we could be really working with them at their level, no matter what, but keep them with their social group. That was an important thing. So anyway, it's like, as long as they're ready to graduate and go on to the school that they want to go to, I'm good. It seems to me, and I really only have this example in a high school level, and neither one of you are going to have high school. But to me, it's easier to visualize this way. Like, if I'm a school, I have a high school, and I'm getting ninth graders, biological ninth graders in who can read at a second grade level. And I graduate that kid, not in 4 years, but in 6 years. Haven't I really graduated that kid? Third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh. as basically an eighth grader? Haven't I just advanced an eighth grader? You know, because I took a second grader and I graduated them in 6 years. So like that to me is data that I think would be very valuable to be able to tell your authorizer, you know, of course you get credit for somebody graduating in 6 years, but maybe it's 7 years it takes to graduate. That's still really advanced. And so you want to be telling as full a picture of your students as possible. I don't really, not having taken any of the statewide assessments, I don't really know why our kids aren't doing better. But I think what the commission wants to see is a school leadership team, the board and the head administrator, really working on to figure out if there are barriers to certain subgroups or students. And the school is looking to eliminate those barriers. Because when we eliminate barriers to students learning, you know, they will do better. So it's really critical as you're building out your schools to be thinking about how do we show as a team, as a board and a head administrator, how are we going to show that level of work? And I'm going to tell you, the only way you can show it is through your meetings, through your meeting minutes. And of course, now they have to be recorded and posted, so people should be able to listen to a recorded meeting. They should be able to hear everything and understand everything that's being said. Or conversely, my preference would be able to just be able to read your minutes and see, yes, I can see that they've been discussing you know, eliminating barriers. Now, you don't want to be saying, well, we've got this one student, Lucy Valenzuela, who's brilliant, and what are we going to do with her? Like, you can't, you're not talking about that, but like, we have gifted students, and what are we going to do to enrich their learning opportunities? What are we doing to help the kids that are struggling? And really making sure that you guys are focused on that. But I want to talk about this graph too. So,
Missy, I have a question, please.
yeah.
What grade does Vista start at?
Which grade does Vistas start at? Does anybody on my team know? Isn't it for first grade, kindergarten? When do they start testing?
I thought it was first grade, but
Yeah,
Ted, can you Google it or look it up on our
Yeah.
website? Thanks.
Okay, and
Um,
besides Vistas, the other state assessment that you would be requesting is the one that they take in third grade, right? Which is the statewide assessment?
Yeah, so whatever the statewide assessments are, yeah, that's what
Okay.
you have to be doing.
So there would be
That's
Vistas and the statewide assessment, and then whatever one we choose. If we choose
If you
one.
want to do option two, yes,
Okay.
it's so, and then if you're going to choose option two and have a supplemental academic test that you are providing the data for, it will help your overall academic rating on this gorgeous table that Director Russell developed. So you can see with option 1A1, which is just Vistas, over on the statewide accountability system, over on the left, those are the overall scores and what you get as a rating. If, oh, and I see we've got received spelled incorrectly. Sorry about that. So this, you know, if you're just doing option one with the statewide accountability, you're going to get ranked this way. Where this becomes, you know, if you exceed or meet, that's lovely, and just click your heels and whistle the rest of your day away. If you're working to meet or does not meet, that's where the problem is. So if you choose option 1A2 to add the supplemental data, the performance outcomes on your supplemental data can help your rating, your overall rating. So as you can see here, if greater than or equal to 80% of your students meet the math and reading cells, then, and you had a working to meet, but this kicks in, then your overall rating gets changed to meets. Right? And if you were meeting the goal and you achieve this 80%, then you would be exceeds. So obviously if you're exceeds on the statewide accountability, doesn't matter what you do on your supplemental, you're still exceeds. But you can see, like with the working to meet, if you don't have at least 50% of your students providing, you know, this growth and proficiency target in both math and reading, you'll still just be a working to meet. So it's a nice lifeline, but again, it's hard to know until you start testing kids where you think your kids are gonna fall.
Thank you.
I'm still looking, Missy, like a simple Google search doesn't provide that, so
Okay.
I'll let you know.
All right, let us know.
Thank you.
So this also include, so option 1A1, 1A2, those are for your overall student population. Then there's that's number 1 on your academic framework. Number 2 on your academic framework is outcomes for student subgroups. So the subgroups are male, female, low income, English learners, students with disabilities, and then the ethnic groups, Asian, Black, Hispanic, Native American, and white. So it looks very much the same. However, with subgroups, it can be a problem if you have small numbers because the commissioners can't see anything with less than 20 students. Which frankly, Steve, I don't even know if the commission could look at anything for your school with the low number of students that you would have to open up with, which is
So
hard. They really want to be able to look at academic data. But, and of course, your school will see it. Your school will know exactly what the numbers are. You just can't report it to the commission because they have to look at everything that they look at is public information. And so, you know, the reason we don't look at that is because somebody could figure out what student or students we're talking about. And we don't want to shame any students. So, whichever option you choose, option 1, option 2, you will be choosing it for both the overall and the subgroups. So you can't just, you know, say, well, we'll do option 2 for the overall and we'll do option 1 for the subgroups. It has to be the same choice for both. And so, I mean, this is basically if you're just doing the statewide assessment, then option 2 is that you are adding in a supplemental proficiency and growth measurement that's agreed upon. And you get all 4 of the categories. And then again, a similar table that shows, but you'll notice, I mean, it's a similar table, but you'll see that if you are getting greater than or equal to 70% in target in reading and math, it can change even a does not meet to an exceeds. So it seems to be more advantageous at the subgroup level. But the subgroups, you know, you have to have enough people to report on it. I do think that it's important to understand, and this is if you're doing option 3, which neither of you are able to do this go around, but it is something you could propose in 5 years at renewal if you felt like you really had a student population where you did not want the PEC to be looking at the statewide accountability system. But so, you know, I think the choices that you have are thinking about your capacity for getting all that data annually reported out to your board and to the CSD within the fiscal year. So it has to be by June, if possible. And you will also have that with mission goal. So it's not, that's not the only bit of data that you're going to be working on and collecting and reporting on for the authorizer. You also would have at least one mission goal. Again, I'm going to advocate for you to choose one mission goal. Just because I think that to get that all underneath your belt and get into a groove with as you're launching a new school, it's easier. It's just easier. Now the hard part is making sure that you are writing a goal that you can measure for all of the students at your school. And some people really want to have a goal that they do for just a single grade. Again, I want to tell you, you can and should be working on mission goals that you have crafted that are similar to what you would negotiate with the commission that you can do internally and not have connected to your contract. It's still information that you could use in your renewal report because you would have data. You would say, you know, we've been working on collecting data around this aspect of our mission, and we really feel like it shows why our school is doing so well. So because there are things I think that are going to be difficult to necessarily quantify, but that could be really interesting around your particular missions. You're going to have to think about mission goals every 5 years. Some schools will keep the same goal, but you know, if you're meeting your goal, you're exceeding your goal, the commission's going to want to push you to have a tougher goal next go around. So anyway, I think that there can be some areas around mission goal work that could be really interesting, but maybe it's going to take 5 years worth of quantifiable qualifiable data that you can turn into quantifiable data. So like, you know, something a little more esoteric that you need a couple years of data around before you can start to put numbers on it and figure out like what percentage shows that we're being successful. So anyway, the mission is really why charter schools exist. So your missions are unique to your plans, and so you want to be thinking about why this school, in the sense of like, why are people choosing our school? What makes our school unique, special, interesting? And it's really kind of your mission and the way you approach teaching and learning with your kids. So, I gotta hide my controls. Did I just hide? Yeah, I'll leave it down here. So when it comes to mission goals, you have to assess at least 85% of your students. If you assess less than that, you will be given it does not meet, no matter what your data shows. If the testing data is not provided to the Charter Schools Division for review by the timeline that's been established, then the results are considered invalid. So there's no, oh, we forgot to collect that. Or even what we've had, some of recently is a change in head administrator, and the new head administrator didn't know what they had to do around the mission goal and didn't collect the data. It's still going to get you a does not meet. That's a, oh, gee, that's a bummer, but it's still going to get the school a does not meet. And so again, that's one of those things that happens. You can have changes in head administrator, you can have changes in board members, and that's why we want you to develop a robust annual board calendar that you review annually with the board, and have things like reporting on mission goal, reporting on academic data, built into the calendar, so that when you're, if you do have a switch over and you're interviewing and talking with a new head administrator, you are, this is part of your job, this is our mission goal. This is the data that you need to be working on and collecting, and this is when it's due, to us, the board, and to the Charter Schools Division. So, and you can't just change assessments or the way in which the measures are calculated, without talking to the authorizer first. So you can make changes mid-contract, but that does require an amendment to the contract, and can, around mission goals, require a secondary round of negotiations, to come to an agreement on that. So the other reason I think that it's a good idea to just go with one goal, at least in your first contract term, is because there's one rating area for this. And so if you had two goals and you exceeded one and you didn't meet the other, you could be a meets or working to meets. They're going to have to average that. And I don't know, if you had two goals and one was for the whole school, and that was a does not meet, and you had one for a single grade and that was an exceeds, if it was my job, I would probably rate that as a working to meet, because the larger group didn't meet. And conversely, if it was switched around and the overall school exceeded their goal and the one single grade didn't meet their goal, I would say that would probably be a meets, because the majority of the people did exceed. But I don't. Right now, I think that's kind of just a judgment call. There's nothing really set in stone about that. So you can do 2 goals, they will be averaged out. The commission really wants you to be thinking about results-based accountability when you're thinking about, and I think that you need to, now that you've been approved to enter your implementation year, your whole mindset should switch to kind of a results-based accountability mindset in everything to do with the school, because what you really need to be looking at is your first renewal. And in your first renewal, you're gonna have to talk about every year of your contract, how much did you do? How well did you do it? Who's better off as a result? And how do you know it? So like, you don't necessarily literally have to use that kind of language, but that's what the commission wants to know. They really want to know, what did you do every year? What adjustments did you think you needed to make? That the adults involved at the school are always focused on the horizon, on what could be done better, on how to be getting better results for the students at the school. And not just, well, we know because we're in the school every day and we see it and we feel it. It needs to be a measurable way to communicate. It needs to be something measurable, which in my opinion, is kind of the downside of running a public school. That's the exchange for public money. Everything has to be measured. Everything has to be quantified, measured, and you have to come every year and say, this is what we've done. And we're moving the ball forward for each of these students at our school, in a consistent manner. And it's a tall ask.
So Missy, what I found is that students in grades 3 through 8 and 11 are assessed in math and reading. I thought it was
Reading.
earlier, but I guess
Yeah.
it starts in 3rd. I mean, it does say for schools that do not enroll students in grade 3 or higher, students take the iStation early reading assessment,
Yeah,
but I don't know if that's included in Vista's data.
I think it is. Thanks, Ted. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
So Miss
So-
Missy, I'm
Yes.
sorry, back to that. So we're gonna use iStation in both English and Spanish because that's the only way to measure a bilingual school. So is that gonna be enough data since we're not getting, I mean, like I'm opening up with K1. For the first 3 years, iStation will be the only data that we will have since Vistas won't be available for them.
Right, and so in that instance, yeah, the commission was probably going to want you to choose option 2 and have whatever they call iStation now,
Amira.
Amira.
It's actually
So
pretty incredible. My daughter's been working on Amira and the feedback that it gives the students and it's impressive. Like they
That's
did their
good.
homework. Yeah, they did their homework.
I like changes like that. I can't, the name changes, just keep the names. But whatever. I'm sure I'll remember Amira at some point.
Thank you, Mr. Ted.
So as you're looking at what you wrote in your application for your mission goals, and we made you, the application asks you to write 2, but you do not have to propose 2. You can propose 1, or you can propose 2. But one of the goals has to be covering all of the grade levels. So think about, what is uniquely transformative about our school? what are the ways, all the ways that students are experiencing the mission. So, there might be activities or certificates, credentials that kids are getting. If kids are earning a bilingual certificates or something, that's something. I know that there are kind of outdoor experiential types of assessments that schools have used to look at how that type of education is impactful to students. So you have to think about, you have to write in your goal, and we'll be helping you, particularly Bridget will be helping, because we know the pain of writing an unclear goal or a goal that is actually not really measurable. And so we will be working very closely with you guys individually, each school individually, on making sure that it works for your school. But you should be coming to the table with us with an idea of, like it's going to take it's going to take 80% of my second graders are going to need to get to something for me to say that our school has met the goal, right? And so, and again, we'll work with you and help you on that, but I want you to be thinking about some of the basics before we have that meeting. So also think about, how is your approach uniquely transformative for your students? What skills are your students gaining? And when it comes to like, is anyone better off? I do know that the commission doesn't ever like the charter schools division or other schools to be throwing other schools under buses, right? So like, our kids are doing better than the kids at that school because of this. So it's not that type of mindset. It's more of the mindset of, of advertisers, right? Like, you want to use our product because you'll have whiter teeth, right? You want your kids to come to our school because they'll have a meaningful, enriched experience, and they'll leave bilingual, or they'll leave, being able to, navigate through life with executive function skills, like whatever it is. So, and then how do you know it's working is like, what is your outcome data? What are the numbers? So this is what I pulled from Collins Lake, built on foundational beliefs that learning is an act of life, that teaching is an act of love. Our vision is to grow expert learners who have skills and knowledge to care for themselves, their families, their culture, their community, and their natural environment. So this is the mission I took from your application, and it's lovely. I'm not sure what you want to measure from this. Another aspect of the mission goal where we can use for more measurable goals is whatever is developed for your educational plan. So you can take from the educational plan and say, this is what we're going to measure. or, you know, at this stage, you can certainly add to your mission statements so that there is something more concrete and measurable in them. But
Yeah, and I agree with you. It is lovely, but to me, to me, it doesn't mean anything, but that's, I'm not the writer.
well,
But
and
it-
it's, you know, it's the type of thing, I mean, that is what most, like, you want a mission that's kind of ethereal, but in the context, and the Public Education Commission has really shifted the goalposts a huge amount on missions and mission goals. And so it's been, you know, it's not cut and dried. It's not really straightforward. They both kind of want to see your ethereal statement, but then they're like, measure it. So, you know, like I said, we will work with you on like aspects of your educational program that that might fit better, that's more measurable. Or we can work on figuring out a mission statement that's going to be something that's going to, you know, attract a parent, but also have some aspect of it that you really feel strongly you can measure it. Or you might have an idea from like, well, we know how to measure expert learners. And so we're good, you know, and that's fine.
So what I would look at in something like that is that what might be measurable is that the second graders, kindergarten, first and second graders, spent a night out camping, cooked their own food. And the third and fourth graders, were there for 3 nights, and brought all their materials up by themselves, things like that, as terms of the outdoors, that they're able to take care of themselves.
You'd have to have some type of like survey or assessment type of
Yeah.
thing. So that's, yeah. So, and this is what you had written in your application. The students will successfully complete 2 project-based learning opportunities during the year, by scoring an 80% or higher on the summative assessment. And so that's, you know, pretty close, but you'd also have to think about then saying, 90% of all of the students have to score 80% or higher. And it could be, you know, a combined score, like if they scored a 60 on one and a 100 on the other, and they combined to 80, like you could propose something like that. So that first goal is pretty close and would just take a little bit of tweaking around, like, you know, determining what are the things that mean you exceed the goal, that you met the goal, that you didn't meet the goal, types of categories. But that, and so goal 1 is pretty close and potentially a good goal to go with for your whole student population. You offered up a second goal: 100% of third and fourth graders will successfully complete mentorship training that includes strategies to engage in restorative justice. So again, you know, I would suggest that internally your school do that, and see how your kids do. You probably wouldn't want to propose that 100% of the kids are going to achieve a thing. 100% of the kids are going to do the thing. But then again, you know, like how many, is it 80% of the kids doing the thing and at 100%? You know, I don't know. But I think that that's something that you could internally do and then say, hey, you know, for our next contract term, we want to add that goal, or we want to tweak it a little bit and add it. So those are all options. So Inspira, you're next. You will cultivate globally minded scholars through a rigorous Spanish language acquisition program focused on STEAM instructional programming. So there's plenty to measure there. And you had 2 goals as well. Promoting proficiency in Spanish and STEAM integration. By the end of the school year, students will demonstrate mastery in English, Spanish, English communication. So again, goal one is almost there. It would just have to be determined, what percentage of the students per grade needing to achieve that for you to exceed or meet or work to meet type of thing. And then enhance inquiry-based learning to foster global awareness by the end of the academic. School year, students will demonstrate and provide global awareness and critical thinking skills. So again, it's another really good goal. I would choose one of these goals to propose with some tweaking, and then I would be internally doing the other goal with my board, reporting it out to them as if it's part of our contract.
Missy, we
Just-
have a table that went along with this on the application, and I had percentages on there.
Awesome. Yeah, I didn't have the ability to take it all in and make it this, because it's already 9:30 and we have our first of the, oh, and hey, Kat, I can't hear you, Kat.
I'm just reading out loud, sorry.
Oh, okay. So anyway, we have the first of our PED Bureau people, Dana Malone, here with us. Hi, Dana. She is our expert on McKinney-Vento and homeless education, helping your least advantaged kids get what they need. So take it away, Dana. Oh, you're muted.
Just telling you, this is the most exciting presentation you'll ever have, so you don't want to miss out on this. Hang on. And move this out of the way. Slideshow, here we go. All right. So hi, I'm Dana Malone. I'm your state coordinator for the education of homeless children and youth with PED. I'm part of the Student Support Services Division and part of the At-Risk Intervention Response Bureau. All right, I'm gonna have to move you guys around so I can see everything. You don't know that you're being moved around, but I'm moving, yeah. All right, okay. So how many students experience homelessness in New Mexico right now? So pretty much we land anywhere between 10,000 and 12,000 students across the state. A lot of times there's the assumption that maybe they are all in Albuquerque or some of our bigger cities, but that is not actually the situation at all. Let's see. I want to share with you that we also in McKinney-Vento look at our siblings of our students that are identified as experiencing homelessness, and we have approximately about 3,000 of them that we. Hang on. Oops. I'm not having. What am I doing here? Okay, I've got too many screens open. I am so sorry. I think I've lost. Can you still see the presentation?
Yes, I can
I am
see how many students experience homelessness in New Mexico.
okay. I'm sorry. I have too many screens open at this moment, so I think I'm just gonna have to leave this in this mode for right now, if that's okay with you guys. All
We
right,
can
because
survive.
I'm confusing myself, so we don't want to go there. All right, so we have over 10,000 students identified as McKinney-Vento throughout the state. So that's approximately 3.3% of our population of students. And then we want to make sure that our younger siblings also are on track to hit our education system. So we also include them in our data and make sure that they're receiving the services they need. Okay, chronic absenteeism. If you know anything about our students experiencing homelessness, they definitely have a harder time getting to school than any of your other students, and they also will always have the highest chronic absenteeism rate of your student groups. So you, for instance, all your students experiencing homelessness are at 41% for chronic absenteeism, whereas our students experiencing homelessness are at 67, almost 68%. So most of our kids are living in what we call a doubled up situation, and we'll cover that a little bit more in just a little bit. Pretty much all of our kids are living in a doubled up situation, and we'll talk about how we get to that living situation in New Mexico specifically. But just so you know, we are in line with the rest of the United States as well. So only 10% are in living situations of places that we definitely would not want to see our kids in. Staying outside or something inadequate housing. 10% are in shelters, and 7% are staying in a hotel or a motel. And then for graduation rates, I mean, you can obviously tell if our students aren't able to make it to school, their graduation rates also are probably not going to be really great, right? So all of our students are graduating at 76.5%. Economically disadvantaged is 66%. Shake it out a little bit further and you'll find out that students experiencing homelessness actually have the lowest graduation rate. So also we talked about, not all of our McKinney-Vento students are living in Albuquerque and Santa Fe and Las Cruces. What you can see here is that 22%, almost 25, almost a quarter of them are living in rural areas. 25.7% have special needs, and 13% are youth on their own, which means they are unaccompanied. They are not in the physical custody of their legal guardian, and they're living in one of our McKinney-Vento situations. All right, so let's dig in a little bit more to the McKinney-Vento Act. So this act has been around for a really long time, since about 1987. It gave us 20-something years to figure out where there were a lot of loopholes, where our act wasn't necessarily as strong as it needed to be. So when the Every Student Succeeds Act came along, we ended up kind of closing all the easy little loopholes that had prevented us from actually being able to provide our students with what they actually need. And so I'm forever thankful for the Every Student Succeeds Act in that way, because it really does allow us to dig into the unique educational batteries. Oh, shouldn't be there. Barriers is what that should be, and challenges faced by our students experiencing homelessness. So for every state, there has to be a state coordinator, and for New Mexico, that's me. And then every LEA has to have what we call a homeless liaison. So be thinking about that moving forward. All right, so the definition is pretty much everything for McKinney-Vento. So who actually qualifies as McKinney-Vento eligible? So we have to, the definition is twofold. So the first part is asking, can a student go to the same place every night to sleep in a safe and sufficient space? So fixed, regular, and adequate means it's a permanent place to live. It's not going to change. A permanent place to live is a house. Not permanent place to live is a hotel. Okay, regular means it doesn't matter what's going on. I can go and I can lay my head on that pillow every single night. It's predictable, routine. Doesn't matter if I've gotten into a fight with my parents, or maybe my mom's boyfriend's coming into town and they want me to scoot out for a few days. And then adequate, we'll break that down a little bit more, but that's talking about safe and sufficient space. So we'll definitely get into that just a little bit more. All right, eligibility is the next part of the question. So the first part is are they living in a fixed, adequate, and fixed? Who's decided to do this on a Monday morning? Missy, was this you? Like, come on.
Yes, ma'am. It's always on a Monday morning. You know that.
Yeah, I'm having a hard time getting my Monday face on. All right, so again, so the question is, can the student go to the same place every night and sleep in a safe and sufficient space? So these are the examples that the law provides as far as what McKinney-Vento looks like, what our families living in unstable living situations actually looks like. So we talked about the fact that they might be living in a doubled up situation. So they're actually sharing the housing of others due to loss of housing or an economic hardship or a similar reason. Again, we call that doubled up. So that means if I lost my job and then I lost my housing and everything else as a result, my natural instinct is to call my sister up and say, hey, can I stay with you for a little bit while I'm going through, a crisis? And that's kind of what everybody does. I mean, your first instinct is not going to be to pack up your stuff and go to a shelter because, I mean, that's kind of the last place people go. So I'm going to, again, be with people who care about me, hopefully, while I'm going through one of the worst times of my life. And so also, if you think about New Mexico, we don't actually have a lot of shelters in New Mexico for families, for youth, for individuals. There's not a lot. So our families oftentimes are going to be living in hotels and motels and not the nice ones in your community, the ones that they can afford. Trailer parks, and I don't mean like mobile home parks. What I'm talking about is kind of like camping, where it's fun to go camping for about a week or two and not for a whole entire school year. Camping grounds specifically. And it's all because they cannot find a place that they can afford somewhere in the community. All right. Any of our families that are living in or students living in emergency or transitional shelters? Any of our families that are living in places that they shouldn't be living, like cars, parks, abandoned buildings, substandard housing, bus or train stations. In New Mexico, because we have warmer weather, a lot of times we'll see families in storage facilities, storage buildings, garages, barns, those kinds of places as well. But um, again, those are places where people should not be living. And then we talked about this just briefly a few minutes ago, but eligibility also includes unaccompanied youth. And so that's going to be any of your students who are living in any of our McKinney-Vento situations, and they are not in the physical custody of their parent or legal guardian. That could even be some of your students that are living with grandma and grandpa who don't have legal custody, or, aunts or friends. A lot of times it's an unaccompanied youth that's crashing on somebody else's couch. We call it couch surfing. All right. So what's different about our students experiencing homelessness and other student groups, really the student group with the most similar rights and protections are students in foster care. And so as we're talking through this, you can think about this applying to students in foster care as well. So our students have the right to a free appropriate public education. That's for everybody. Our students have the right to enroll immediately, even if they're lacking documents that they normally would need for school, like birth certificates, transcripts, vaccination records, immunization stuff. Maybe they have fines and fees from another school from the past. Those are the kinds of things we're talking about. You have to enroll them immediately anyway. And even if they are not with their legal guardian, you must enroll our students immediately anyway, because then the homeless liaison's job is to help them get all this stuff in place. But what we know about our kids is they have been out of school more than they've been in school likely, and we want them to be in school. School's the safest place for them to be. That's where adults like you all are. They can help them meet their basic needs. You're safe. That's also, where their friends are. Kids need to be in school. All right. And then our students have something unique that they can do. It's called School of Origin, really. But they can enroll in the school where they went to when, before they became homeless, because again, that's where all their friends, you guys are, things that they know, their routines, their fun things that they like to do in school. Or they can go to the new school in the area where they just moved to. So, you know, if they are staying in a shelter somewhere, they have the right to go to that school where they were before they became homeless, or they can go to the school and, you know, that's beside the shelter or close to the shelter. Again, they can make that decision. Um, so unaccompanied homeless youth can make that decision, or families can make that decision, and it's up to them, and we have to honor it. So, school of origin, they get to choose, and then we have to make a lot of decisions after that. But if the school believes, if the school district, or, you know, LEA, if you're a charter school, obviously your charter schools, um, the LEA believes that the school selected is not in the student's best interest, then the district must, or the LEA, change that up, must provide the student with a written explanation of its position and inform the student of his or her right to appeal their decision. And if they decide that if their decision is different than what you guys decide, you have to let them in immediately. You have to let them know of their right to appeal. It's called dispute resolution. You have to let them in immediately until the appeal is completed. And hopefully, really, we just want the students to be in the school that they want to be in. Um, that's the bottom line, because they're likely gonna do much better if they're happy. All right, and then transportation is something that's going to be a little bit unique for you all. If you don't provide transportation to any of your other students, you must provide transportation to your students that are McKinney-Vento, because it's really one of the main reasons why they don't get to school. So we're going to eliminate that problem for them. There's a lot of different ways that you guys can do that for them. You know, you could partner with the school district in your area. You could use Uber or Lyft or something along those lines. You could use public transportation if you're in Albuquerque, or, you know, one of the bigger cities that has a bus system in place. You could carpool. You could reimburse families or students for gas. For every day that they come to school. There's a lot of different things that we can do different for our students experiencing homelessness and students in foster care than you can do for any of your other student groups. And again, they have unique needs, so we have to come up with unique responses to help them overcome their barriers. All right. And then making sure that the services that they are receiving are comparable to the others provided to your other students. And so again, our students are going to have some unique needs that your other students are not going to have, and we'll talk through those in just a little bit. All right. So if you, I don't think that you guys have had enough. Have you been able to get your data into Vistas yet? Are you
They don't
able
have
to
any,
see?
yeah, they don't have any students, so they don't,
That's what I was thinking. So
yeah.
eventually you'll be able to pull this data for your own students, but it's really telling. Just so you know, that these are the proficiency rates for the state for math, reading, and science. Here's what economically disadvantaged looks like. You can tell there's a big gap there. But if we really want to know what our students experiencing homelessness need, you're going to have to shake it out just a little bit further. And you can see that our students have the lowest proficiency rates. But we did make some progress in reading. And I have my own theory about that. I don't think that anybody's proved it scientifically, but I'm just going to say, you know, when you are living in a homeless situation, maybe you don't have the luxury of TV or, you know, social media or something like that. Reading can be a really cool escape. Um, so, but anyway, okay, so graduation, as far as that goes, you know, we're looking at the state graduation rate. We're looking at economically disadvantaged, shaking it out a little bit further, looking and seeing that our students experiencing homelessness have the lowest graduation rate. But there was some growth. So woohoo, way to go, right? And I want you to know right now, and this is not on this right now, but our students experiencing homelessness that complete 2 CTE, Career Technical Education concentrators, their graduation rate goes from 61% up to 93%. Like CTE might be the answer for students experiencing homelessness and students in foster care as well. It's amazing. And again, we kind of talked about regular attendance, what that looks like. Ours obviously have the worst attendance. But if this is what your life looks like, you can only imagine how rough it would be every single day to try to get yourself to school. So we know that our students experiencing homelessness, You know, I mean, if you're moving quite a bit, quite honestly, I can't go anywhere without leaving some part of something of mine behind. If you're moving, 2 to 9 times a year, there's a really good chance that you don't have everything that you need to get your students enrolled. If you left a domestic violence situation immediately, you didn't have time to grab those records. If your house burnt down, you didn't have time to get all that stuff. If you put all your stuff into storage and then weren't able to pay your storage fees, you lost all of that stuff. So we know that our students move around and change schools a lot. They change anywhere between 2 to 9 times a school year. Every time that they move around, I saw the new numbers out now. It is 4 to 6 months of their educational progress. So if they're moving more than 2 times a year, you can understand where school gets really, really difficult for them. Of course, living in a homeless situation, there's really no way that you can't be stressed out about that, even if you're a child. You're dealing with a lot of hunger issues. You might be tired because you weren't able to find a place to sleep. You might have some anxiety about where you're going to sleep that night, what you're going to have to do to sleep there, where you're going to get your next meal, all the good stuff that our kids think about while they're trying to get an education. Our students might not have school supplies that they need or even a quiet place to study. They might have, terrible transportation options, even if the schools are trying their hardest to keep up with them. If they're moving every 2 weeks, you can understand that that's even a challenge. And a lot of our kids just don't have a parent or guardian there to help them make good decisions. Think back to when we were 16. And if we were 16 trying to navigate the world on our own, you can understand how maybe making bad decisions happens sometimes. So what we see for our students that are in our homeless situation is obviously they're going to be more chronically absent from school. They're going to get lower grades because they weren't there to receive an instruction. We know that we have an unusually high rate of our students that are experiencing homelessness that also have special needs. The way that happens a lot of times is maybe when they were pregnant, the moms were pregnant, they didn't get any kind of services that they needed, or maybe once the baby was born, they didn't get services that they needed. So um, we can expect that that's always going to be a, a data point that we need to look at. And then also scoring poorly on assessment tests, and that's if they even chose to sign or had the ability, not just chose, but had the ability to get to school that day. So when everything is, against you and you're pushing a huge boulder up a hill every single day to go to school, if you finally get to that decision corner, do I drop out of school and support myself, or do I stay in school and try to just make the best of it? Most of our kids are going to drop out when they're in those kinds of situations. Excuse me, when they're in those kinds of situations, which is what we don't want, because that having that piece of paper in your hand, um, you know, when you leave into the world really makes a difference, especially for our students. Okay, so Chapin Hall has done some studies um, and has shown us that, graduating is really kind of one of the main things that will um, either help our kids reach success or help them um, into a world, a lifetime of adult homelessness. We know that some of our students are really at more high risk than other students of experiencing homelessness after high school. So if they don't have a high school diploma, they are 346% likely higher risk of becoming homeless. And then LGBTQ youth, 120% higher risk. Just low income folks, 162%. If you're Hispanic, not and white, 33%. If you're Black, African American, 83%. And if you are unmarried, parenting youth, 200%. So one way to say it is that if you have stable housing, you are more likely to have educational success, which will lead to a lifetime of good income and safety nets, right? So the opposite would be true for our students experiencing homelessness. If they don't have stable housing, they are much less likely to have educational success and then also not be able to have an income to support themselves and safety nets that we know that will keep them out of homelessness throughout their lifetime. All right, so it's not all bad news. There are definitely some things that we can do to intervene. Like I've been saying, our students experiencing homelessness have some unique needs, so we have to have some unique strategies to actually make sure that we're meeting their needs. So money for McKinney-Vento, that could be, the McKinney-Vento subgrant, but the next time you'll be able to apply for that's going to be in the spring of 2027. So you guys are opening up before then. What do you do, right? Well, regardless of what funding stream you have, you're still responsible for meeting our students' educational needs. So let's take a look at what that might look like when you are actually able to apply for Title I funding, if you do, if you are eligible for it. That's where you're going to have some funding to meet our students' needs. But between all of that, you're going to have to think about, well, what are we going to do if they need something? All right, so here are the kinds of things you're going to be, ooh, what is wrong with this? This is so weird. I don't know what happened. Anyway, we're going to just talk through it anyway, like nothing's wrong, okay? All right, so these are the things that you're going to have to think about. When I am thinking about McKinney-Vento, I kind of like to separate it into 3 different categories. One of the things is making sure that our kids are enrolled, because if they're not enrolled, nothing else is happening. The next part is making sure that our kids are actually attending school. Again, if they're not attending school, we're not going to see any kind of progress of any kind. And then making sure that they're actually succeeding. What do they need in order to be successful in school? All right, so birth certificates are going to be something that our kids are going to need for enrolling in school, right? So birth certificates, if you're born in New Mexico, are free if you are experiencing homelessness. So your homeless liaison can pick up the birth certificates, your school nurses, your school counselors, or even the families or youth themselves. Immunizations, there's not usually a cost associated with it, but if there is, you want to make sure that that's covered. As far as birth certificates go, there's a chance that some of your students might not have been born in New Mexico or even in the United States. So that's something to consider as well. You'll always have to make sure that those costs are covered. Again, we were talking about, maybe a student moves in from somewhere and they actually have some fees or costs from another school that they need to get taken care of. We're either going to waive them or just cover them because we don't want that preventing them from being able to move forward. Any kind of student fees that you guys are going to need for your students, if they have to buy a certain book or they need a camera for their photography class, or I don't know what else they would possibly need. You want to make sure that you're either covering them or waiving them for them so they are able to participate as well. We talked about early childhood programs. If that's what's needed, you could use your funding for that. Transportation, there's a lot of cool ways our kids can get to school. You're going to have to think about that. And make sure you've got a little bit stashed on the side so that they are able to, whatever creative ways you're going to need to help think of to get them to school. We've even purchased bikes for students, so that they are able to, I think it was Los Lunas or Belen, somewhere around in there. There was a family living so far off the grid that the bus couldn't even get to them. So we had to buy them bikes just so they could get to the bus stop. All right,
Dana,
basically.
I hate to ask a question right now because I know you're on a roll, but if we bought them bikes, would we be liable like for insurance for them or how would that work? I guess I'm just always fearful of the unknown, right?
That is not something that we've had to discuss so far, but I think that the schools, when they were doing that, made sure that they bought helmets and all the other stuff and taught them some basic safety rules. Because again, for them, it was just them getting from wherever they were staying to the bus stop. All right. We were saying basic needs. That's kind of a no-brainer. Kids are probably going to need clothing. They're probably going to need some school supplies. They're probably going to need some hygiene products. So think about those kinds of things. You know, if you guys are doing any kind of field trips or class projects, you might have to do something different for your students experiencing homelessness. You know, they might not have a place to set it all up. They might not have the ability to purchase whatever they need for the class project. Or if you guys are going on the field trip, it's a $5 copay. Doesn't sound like a lot if you have $5, but if you don't have $5, you know, that's a whole different situation. So you guys, again, want to cover those costs or just waive them for those students. If, you know, our kids move around quickly, if they're needing some sort of expedited evaluation, maybe for special education or something else, that would be another way to spend your funding if that's what's needed. So we actually want to believe that kids come to school for the education piece, but really they kind of come for the fun part. So if they're involved in any sort of extracurricular activity, club, whatever, we want to make sure that you're covering any kind of costs associated with it so that our kids get to have the same experience as all the other students. Now, succeeding looks a little bit different. You know, anytime your school doors are open, we want to make sure our students experiencing homelessness have the ability to be a part of that. So, you know, if you guys have any sort of before or after school programming or Saturday classes or summer school or credit recovery, again, covering those costs, making sure that the kids even have a way to get there. So that would look like transportation if it's a little bit different than what you guys would normally do. Tutoring. We need to make sure that our kids have good tutoring because again, if they've been out of school quite a bit, they might be behind. And then if you can, I don't know if you guys can see what I'm saying, but anyway, you know, if there's, you know, now we're at graduation, we definitely want our kids experiencing homelessness to be able to go through that rite of passage, right? So covering the, you know, the cost of like a cap and gown or something. All right, are you guys following me with this? Is this okay so
Yeah,
far?
and we can see the whole slide, so
I'm so sorry. It is a Monday. I
it's a
thought I was
Monday.
right on track with it all. All right.
I feel like we've
Okay.
established that that's my fault, so.
Clearly, and I am glad that you are adult enough to accept that. Thank you. Sorry, guys. All right. So you guys will definitely want to make sure you're doing some sort of outreach, letting the community in your schools know that the people in your school know that there's a McKinney-Vento program. You could pay for the homeless liaison's position because you guys ought to have one. You could help, you know, pay for some sort of position that would help support the homeless liaison, like a community navigator. Um, you know, you guys could use your funding to do some sort of professional development related to homelessness. Um, one of the homeless liaison's jobs is to make sure that everybody in the school knows about McKinney-Vento. And so that you could do something with that. Data collection, I'm sure everybody loves that. You could even do cell phones for the homeless liaison. We don't want, you know, families calling the homeless liaison on their, you know, regular line in the evenings and over the weekends and all that kind of stuff. Or you could even buy cell phones for your unaccompanied youth. You know, they don't have an adult that's helping them make a decision. So you get to be that youth, that adult that helps them make good decisions because kids have told us a million times, all I need to know is that there's one person at that school that cares about me and I'll go. All right. Um, we're almost done talking about this piece, and then I want to jump into the part that most people really need as far as, you know, programming goes. All right. We've kind of talked through a lot of this. Something that we don't think about sometimes that is super beneficial, not even for your students experiencing homelessness, but especially for them, are washers and dryers. You know, our kids want to make sure that they are clean when they come to school because that's one of the reasons why they won't come to school is if they're embarrassed about the way they look or they smell. So, you know, thinking about detergent, softener. This is just one of my little things that I'm always about is making sure that you're not sending our families out with trash bags of stuff because nothing sends a stronger message than giving them everything that they need in a trash bag. So consider something like duffel bags or something like that that you know they would be able to use and be a little more discreet in what services they're receiving. If you guys need storage space or you got to rent a storage facility or maybe you need racks for clothes or totes or shelves or something along those lines. Of course, you want to have this stuff. And again, I really, if you guys are going to have storage spaces, for your McKinney-Vento families, please make it a welcoming environment. Don't have things in boxes. Don't have things in trash bags. Have it nice and organized. Make it a place where they want to come, where they feel welcome coming. Because the
Christina?
more welcome they feel, the more likely they are to ask you for help. Yes.
We also pay for, like, say, I don't know how laundromats work, but like a gift card for a laundromat so they can, because I'm thinking about our facilities right now. We're so tiny, and we may not be able to get a washer and dryer, for the first couple of years. Would that be a possibility?
Julia, I love the way you're thinking with that. Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah, just whatever. Again, everybody's community is a little bit different. Everything that your school offers is a little bit different than the rest of the other LEAs. So some things you're going to have in-house that you'll be able to take care of immediately, and that'll be easy. But then sometimes we'll have to think about what our community offers and how to take care of some of the things that we need. And just one more thing that we haven't talked about is, our families experiencing homelessness, they've already lost everything, right? The last thing they want to lose is their family. They're not terrible families most of the time. Things happen, somebody got sick or somebody lost a job or whatever. We want our families experiencing homeless. We want the parents to be able to be involved in their kids' education. And so we might have to do something a little bit different to make sure that those families are able to access any kind of events that you guys are hosting for the students or anything that you're doing like that. All right. And then also, this is the transportation piece that we were talking about a little bit. So there's some really cool stuff that we can do for transportation that we cannot do for any other student groups. The closest student group is going to be your students in foster care. So again, transportation, big reason why our kids don't get to school. So consider doing things like reimbursing parents or youth for gas costs. That's something that we can do. We can purchase prepaid gas cards, or even some homeless liaisons will meet families at the pump and pump the gas for them. And that way they've got the receipt. You could also do things for paying for like limited car repairs. We had a family that was living in their vehicle and it was starting to get cold and the attendance was tanking. And what ended up, the problem was that this family living in this vehicle just needed a battery, and I think it was the brakes repaired or something like that. Very minimal costs as far as repairs go. And then now the students going to school, now they're accessing the services that they need to. Mom can go to work again. So that's kind of an example of limited car repairs. You could also pay for car insurance, car registration, and driver's ed if that is what's needed, and that's the way that you are able to provide transportation. This would be considered what we call excess cost of transportation. All right, and then, excuse me, I gotta take a drink. As a last resort, maybe your family has accessed all of the food in the community. They've gone to all the food banks. Their SNAP benefits have lapsed. There's no free food available to them anymore. You guys would be able to help purchase some emergency food if that's what's needed. Sometimes if our families go to a food bank, they get what they get, but maybe they have a special diet because they have diabetes or they're, gluten-free. They got to live that kind of way, whatever. So there would be times when it would be allowable to purchase food for them in an emergency situation. All right. And then, schools are awesome. We can do a lot of stuff for our kids, but we can't fix everything. So you guys need to know who your community-based partners are. And those are the ones who are going to help fill in the gaps, especially for this first year so that you guys don't have funding to cover what your students might need. So thrift stores, if that's make a partnership with a thrift store so that, they have $10 vouchers. Whenever your kids need something, they can just take the $10, $20, 30, whatever, and go get what they need, if that's what you have to work with. Your faith-based organizations, your churches are really quite generous. Actually, your community is quite generous. They just probably don't know that there's a need. So if you guys let them know that there's a need, you're out there spreading, we've got 5 students at our school that need, shoes. somebody might be like, oh my gosh, I had no idea. I'm going to make sure that those 5 kids get shoes. All right. Don't forget about your organizations like the Kiwanis Club, Rotary Club. They like Lions Club does free glasses. Fraternal Order of Eagles, American Association of University Women. They, if they know that there's a need, they will step in a lot of times because they don't want to hear that our kids don't have what they need to be successful in school. Are you kidding me? They're going to do something about it. In-kind donations are something you consider, fundraisers, and then of course just taking donations. If you guys ever gear at the first of the school year, like, hey, we have some students that aren't able to afford school supplies. People love to give school supplies at the beginning of school year, and that makes them feel like that they're a part of helping, and that makes them feel good, and it also brings awareness to your school. All right, so let's look at what some of the processes you're going to need in order to make McKinney-Vento flow correctly through your LEA. So we're going to cover screening, referrals, information sharing, standardized assessments, standardized plan, and follow-up. Sound like some fun? Let's dig in, right? All right. Actually, maybe we'll take a break for just a second. Do you guys have any questions about McKinney-Vento just right off that? How are you feeling with McKinney-Vento on a scale from 1 to 10? Feeling good? At least a 5? Are we at 5s? Give me a thumbs up if you're at least at a 5. Okay.
Well, and again,
All right.
I'll just chime in, Dana, and say that I think, and I know I talked about this with them when they were doing the new application process. I think that a school would do well to design everything around homeless special needs kids, because if you do that, you're getting everybody, right? And because the kids who have all the advantages are gonna be fine. And you're taking care of the most vulnerable amongst us, I think is
Yeah, I'm not
usually.
gonna lie to you. Thank you for saying that, Missy. There's a temptation sometimes for schools maybe not to want to take our kids. Students experiencing homelessness, because if they don't come to school and they have low proficiency rates and low graduation rates, do we really want those kids? Well, this is your opportunity to help them on their educational journey, help them get over these hurdles. If you're giving them what they need in order to be successful, your whole school's going to benefit from that, just like Missy's saying. Your whole school's going to, when the ones that are not making the mark are coming up, it brings everybody up.
Right, and it's the type of thing that you can talk about every 5 years with your authorizer when it's time to renew, like, this is what our school does to support our most vulnerable students. And, it might be an N size of less than 20, and you really don't have an opportunity to talk about them from the academic standpoint, but you can talk about the adult actions that the school takes to work on removing barriers. And, you know,
I think the challenge is going to be, and again, that's kind of what we do out here is, we're hoping to get the kids that are not succeeding. We really want the kids that are going to be struggling in a traditional school. And
Yeah.
I think our biggest challenge with everything we're doing out here is not being too generous and say, you can't fix all the problems in the world. What do you do to kind of balance that?
Yeah. And I'm gonna say it again. I'll say it 100 more times this year. Our students, especially the unaccompanied youth, the ones that are kind of trying to navigate on their own, they say, I need to know that somebody at that school cares about me. When something good's going on, I can reach out to them. When something bad's going on, I can reach out to them. Somebody who's noticing when I'm there or when I'm not there. If there's one human being at that school that cares about me, I will go to school. And so, yeah, this is the best possible thing that you could possibly do to change their trajectory. All right. I want to encourage you to look at the Homeless Liaison Toolkit. And I'm going to send Missy this link, this presentation so that you guys can go back through it and reflect on it and maybe see what was that crazy lady talking about. All right, so the Homeless Liaison Toolkit is really good. It's very easy to navigate through. There's a million different forms in it that you guys can look at. And, you know, I can't make you use any form I'm going to show you today, but I can bug you to death, which is what I will do, and eventually monitor you. But the ideas I'm going to give you right now, I think that you guys are going to enjoy. It's going to be easy, and then you can create your own. And if you make it better, all I request is that you send it back to me if it looks better than what I'm already doing. So, all right, so here we go. Okay, identification is the very first thing about McKinney-Vento, right? We talked about that definition. If we don't know who these kids are, we can't help them. So what you have to do is make an environment in your school where families and students feel comfortable coming to let you know what's going on. Because again, they're very vulnerable right now. They've lost everything, and the last thing that they want to lose is their family. And that's what they're thinking when they're talking to you. What kind of information do I share with these people? Do I let them know what our real needs are? Because if I do, are they going to call CYFD? Are they going to call law enforcement? And it's not illegal to be homeless. Well, but you know, we want to make sure that again, we are creating a space for them where they feel comfortable and welcome, because they are going to be scared to share information with you. All right. But again, if we don't know that they need help, then how are we going to help them? So you know, for today's purposes, we're using the word homeless and homelessness, but moving forward with you and your families and your students, never use the word homeless, especially if you're a small school or, you know, in a rural area, I'm from a small town, I get it. Words matter. There's a lot of stigma that goes with homelessness. So we're going to use other language such as not stably housed, or students in transition is an incredibly kind way to say it. And a lot of people don't understand that means that maybe you're living in a homeless situation or living in temporary housing, anything that feels a little bit better than saying the words homeless. Okay. So here's, you know, if you have a program in place already, and you're calling it the homeless education program, stop doing that. We don't want you to do that. So think about, these are just some examples from across the state. I think they're really wonderful examples. Santa Fe Public Schools program is called Adelante. Project Link is for Las Cruces Public Schools. Española's program is called Hope. Homeless Outreach for Program for Education. Cuba Cares, like how much better can you get than that? CASA is what Monte del Sol and Santa Fe uses. Or the most popular one is just to call it your McKinney-Vento program, because it doesn't say homeless, but if they know about McKinney-Vento, then they'll understand what that means. Okay, and so in your enrollment paperwork, what you guys need to do is have a screener in there. And I'm going to show you in a couple of slides which one I would like for you guys to use. We've already developed a series of questions with New Mexico Appleseed that we know work in New Mexico. And so again, we want you to put that in your enrollment paperwork so that everybody gets to fill it out. We don't want just the people that we think might need to fill it out having access to it, because that's how people fall through cracks. All right. So, you know, actually, I'm not sure where you guys are located. Where are you guys going to be coming out of?
I'm out of Las Cruces.
Okay.
And I am out of Mora, which is an extremely small community.
Yes. But you guys have a really wonderful McKinney-Vento program inside the Mora schools. You guys have to be partners.
Oh, okay. I didn't know where it was at.
Yeah.
And I also
Okay.
just want to go back to the screener is part of the enrollment paperwork, not the lottery paperwork. Okay, lottery paperwork, very different, and you should absolutely in no uncertain terms ask if people are homeless in a lottery.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. All right. So you guys need to know what your resources are available in your community. And Mora, it's probably going to look a little bit different than in Las Cruces, but that's all right. You still have some good, and I'm going to tell you this. I actually think that small communities come together in a more meaningful way for families experiencing homelessness than your larger cities. In the larger cities, there's a lot more programming, resources available for them, but there's a lot more people competing for those resources. In small communities, you guys don't have a lot of resources, but you still make things work. And so that's kind of the more beautiful piece because I think it feels a little bit more genuine for our families and students when it's in a small community.
Yeah, I was
So
gonna
it's
say
still
that
doable.
between the clinic and the Catholic Church and this and that, and everybody kind of knows who needs help, and people know their neighbors, and so struggling, and word gets out in a nice way.
Exactly. Exactly. And I think that that means something to the people you guys are helping. They could be anonymous in Las Cruces, but they're not anonymous there, you know? All right. So one of the liaison's job I told you was to make sure that everybody in the school knows about McKinney-Vento, all of your staff from your administration all the way down to your janitorial staff. Kids attach themselves to adults in interesting ways. They might remind, their staff might remind them of their aunt or their grandma or whatever, So, I mean, you want to make sure that everybody knows about McKinney-Vento. And then also, um, there's you guys open your doors for a lot of different reasons, for your schools. Sometimes, we have the holidays coming up. So you guys are going to start having some holiday events coming up, or maybe you have open house or you guys are doing child find, anything along those lines. Anytime you guys have your doors open for your families to come in, you should have a little booth there for McKinney-Vento. Just a little something that people can walk by. They could ask you questions if they want to, but they're probably not going to want to ask you questions in front of everybody. So maybe just something about McKinney-Vento that they can walk by and grab real quick. All right, talking about increasing that identification still, there are some posters that you guys are required to have up and they are on our website. And I'm going to show those to you in just a minute. So you want to have these places where families are able to access, people they're able to see these. So maybe up at the front, or if you guys have a school counselor in the counselor's office, or in the bathroom on the back of the doors, that'd be another way. Wherever you guys feel like your families and your youth are going to see these. And basically it just says, if you're living in one of these situations, these are your educational rights, contact Kat, contact Julia, contact whoever else is on here with us. I can't see everybody right now. All right. And then, so I'm going to tell you as the state coordinator, I know who to look for and what to look for when I go to an LEA's website and I'm looking for something on McKinney-Vento. And probably about 80% of the time, I can't find anything on McKinney-Vento. So if I know who to look for and what to look for, and I can't find anything about McKinney-Vento on your website, guess who else can't find any information about McKinney-Vento on your website? The people who actually need it, right? So you need to have something on your website talking about who your homeless liaison is, what McKinney-Vento is all about, what kind of services they'll receive under McKinney-Vento. And then also, I don't care what you guys call your program. Let's see, who am I going to pick on? We'll just use Missy because I like to pick on her. You can call your program Missy's Mansions. I really don't care as long as it doesn't say homelessness. So, if you have this new program that you want to share with your families, however you guys blast out your information, maybe it's through Facebook or something else, you want to roll out this brand new program, Missy's Mansions. This is what this program is all about. These are the people who qualify for it, and these are the things that they're going to get. And I want to back up just a little bit and say that McKinney-Vento is about students. It's not about the families. So everything that we're really talking about is student, not families. All right. But of course, students are attached to families. So if you serve a student, you're serving the family as well. All right. So these are the posters I was talking about just a little bit ago. We have them in English, we have them in Spanish, we also have them in Dene. If you need another language, I know where to find those kinds of things and I can get it for you. Just let me know. And again, this is just going to say, are you living in one of these situations? If so, these are your educational rights. Get in touch with Kat, get in touch with Missy. And then it'll also have information about me as well. So this is, I borrowed this from Pennsylvania. I just thought it was nice. You know, if you like it, use it. If you don't like it, modify it, make something that works for you all. But basically, this is something I can just envision, you know, having on your tables that families can discreetly come by and pick up and learn a little bit more about McKinney-Vento. These are the questions that we would like for you to ask in your enrollment questions. So the first question is, who do you live with? So this can help us get to, is this an unaccompanied youth? Or is this a family that's living doubled up? These are your McKinney-Vento situations. Where are you currently staying? So all those places that we talked about that qualify for McKinney-Vento. Now, most of your students are going to say, in a home that is owned or rented by my parent or guardian. That's what most of your families are going to do. But remember, you can still be McKinney-Vento if you're, oh, wow, somebody just turned our lights on. I think this is the first time this year our lights have been on. Wow, I'm sorry, my eyes are just adjusting. If you work here, you know what I'm talking about. Okay. Anyway, so the homer, you know, if you're in a home that is rent or owned, you can still be McKinney-Vento because you might be living in a home that does not have utilities. If the home does not have utilities, like electricity, heat, and running water, then it is likely they're going to be McKinney-Vento. You're kind of squatting inside a home if you don't have these luxuries. In the summertime, if you're living in a hot place like Albuquerque or Las Cruces, if you don't have air conditioning, that could qualify as McKinney-Vento as well because it's inadequate housing. All right, the next question gets to the safety and adequacy piece again. Does your home or place you sleep at night have any problems that make it unsafe to live in, such as mold, vermin, and it calls out specifically lice, rodents, and fleas? I think you could lump bed bugs into that as well. Or other significant issues, you know, maybe the windows are all busted out, maybe the door's busted, maybe the floor has holes in it, or the ceiling has has holes in it. So again, is it unsafe? And so that can be an uncomfortable question asking about people's housing, but this is literally what the U.S. Department of Education has in their guidance for us. So this is exactly what they're talking about. So we can take that judgment piece away from ourselves. And then it's asking the last question, how many people live in the place where you sleep at night? So maybe you rent or you own a 2-bedroom apartment, but if you have 15 people living there, does your student have an adequate space to sleep? What about studying? Everybody's competing for the same resources. So again, these are the questions we want you to use. And it needs to go right into your enrollment paperwork. And you can call it the residency questions. I don't care what you call it, but they need to be in there. All right, how am I doing on time? Okay, so the rest of it we can cover pretty quickly, thank God, because we've only got 7 minutes left for this piece.
We're
Am I
okay
right?
for time. We're okay for time.
Okay. So the next thing you want to make sure is that you have a smooth referral system, both in-house and with your community partners. So, you know, your homeless liaison is actually the only person who can make the determination if a student is McKinney-Vento or not, because they're going to receive specific training to help make those determinations. Every case is completely different. You have to get the details on it to make those determinations. And so let's see. If you like these questions and you want to use this as your referrals, please feel free. You know, basically it says who's making the referral, who are all the kids in the household, where are they currently staying that you feel like you qualify them for McKinney-Vento, what kinds of things do you think that they need, and then anything else that you might want to write over here. So the hottest way to do this right now is, you know, I would encourage you to look at Albuquerque Public Schools website, because people can make self-referrals. Our families don't want to tell their story over and over and over again. It's hard, it's painful. If they can make a self-referral rather than having to tell you all about it, then go for that. You know, school staff can make a referral online. That's a wonderful option as well. And then your community partners, if they're, you know, maybe you've got a therapist that just discovered that their family became homeless. They can then make a referral to you guys. Hey, this family just, you know, let us know that this is what was going on and they need some additional support. All right. So,
So Dana, hold on a second. So does
sure.
that, so APS has like some type of, that form is on a portal. They'll just click a link and self-identify. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. Hobbs does it that way. A lot of LEAs are doing it that way now because this is something we've been talking about for a few years.
Mhm.
But yeah, if you could, that referral can go straight back to the homeless liaison. That's wonderful. All right, you guys are doing, you're getting a very fast baptism into McKinney-Vento, so I hope you closed your nose before I dunked you, because here we go. All right, so now you've got you've got a referral in place. First of all, you had a screener. Now you got some referrals, and now you have actual families sitting in front of you, or you've received a list of families that might need some assistance. Okay, in my mind, one of three things is going to happen for you all. The first bunch of people are going to be like, I don't know who this lady is. I don't know why she's calling me. I don't want to be on anybody's radar. Go away. They will ghost you. That's the first group, okay? They don't want to be on anybody's radar. And again, most of the time is because it's out of fear, all right? They're scared to divulge their information to you about what's really going on. The second group of people might be unkind to you. They might tell you a little something, something, and they might not even understand that the situation that they're living in, because they have a roof over their head, qualifies for additional services or is considered homelessness in our world. If they tell you something, something, you know what? That's okay. Again, that's probably going to be out of fear. They're scared. So you're just going to keep that door open for them, you know, develop a good rapport. That's okay. That's okay if you don't want any services today. If you do, you know, just let me know. So it could be 2 weeks later, it could be 2 months later that they come back to you and go, oh my God, we really do need some help. We were just really terrified that you were going to turn us into CYFD and, you know, blah, 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 whatever the reason might be. So regardless, if you have identified a student, oh, okay, so that's your second bunch of kids. Your third bunch of kids and families are going to be like, oh, thank God. I did not think that there was any help available to us. You were like an angel to us right now. We don't have transportation. The kids do need clothes. They do need school supplies. So, you know, it's going to kind of go in one of those directions no matter what. But if you have identified a student that is living in one of our McKinney-Vento situations, you absolutely have to enter it into your student information system. Even if they ghost you, even if they don't want services from you, you have identified a student experiencing homelessness. So basically the questions they're going to ask is homeless, yes or no, were they accompanied or unaccompanied, and what their nighttime residence is, because that's what qualifies them for McKinney-Vento services. So just like when you guys are involved with any kind of service in the whole entire world that you're going, maybe you're going to go to counseling or something like that, you're meeting with them and they're going to tell you what services you're going to get. This is what we provide, blah, 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 blah. And usually you guys sign something saying, okay, I want your services. That's kind of what I'm imagining. This part isn't what you don't specifically need to have a McKinney-Vento educational rights form. But what I'm thinking is, you know, our families, if they're living in homelessness, are likely in crisis, right? And when you're in crisis, sometimes you can't think things through all the way because you're thinking about a lot of different things at one time. Maybe you're feeling really overwhelmed. I like to put it in writing for our families and our students so that they can, maybe when they get home, they were like, well, what did she say about transportation again? Or, yeah, maybe I do need this certain thing. They can just refer back to this. So this part isn't actually needed, but, you want to make sure they understand what McKinney-Vento is all about. All right. So, okay, how am I doing? Ooh, okay, I'm going to talk a few more minutes at you and then we'll be done. All right, so you can never assume that you know what our families and our students might need. Because when we make assumptions, I'm going to tell you it looks like a backpack full of school supplies, a few hygiene products, and a couple of snacks. And then, sometimes people are like, okay, good luck. That's not what our students need. That likely will get them in your door because people like free stuff and those are things that they actually need. So, giving them the school supplies, the backpack and all that stuff will bring them to you. But we want to see what else that they possibly need. So I mean, schools are amazing. We do wonderful things. We can do a lot of different things within our school systems, but we can't fix everything, right? So we need to know what's also outside the school system that our families might need. And that's a lot of time going to be housing, health, dental, mental health services, maybe substance abuse services. Maybe they need some additional food. Maybe they need legal assistance. Maybe they need a restraining order or, child custody or different things like that. All right, so what you're going to need to do is create some sort of standardized needs assessment that you use with every single student. Again, we're not guessing what they need. We're trying to find out what they need in order for us to help them become more stable. So if you like this, feel free to use it. If you think it sucks a little bit like I do, and you can make it better, then please make it better and then send it back to me because I'm always looking for a better model than this. But again, what kinds of things they might need for enrollment. Maybe they need something health related. If our students are experiencing homelessness, they actually qualify for presumptive eligibility Medicaid. It's called PMOSA. That means in 3 days they get Medicaid and they can get, maybe they need some glasses or they need some dental work done. Behavioral health, it'll cover that. Maybe, don't not think about it because we don't want to think about it. But maybe sometimes our students might need some reproductive health, or maybe they're already pregnant. And they need some assistance along those lines. Basic needs, that's a no-brainer. Those are things our families are always going to need. You're going to have to become a quick housing specialist in your area and figure out what housing options and, what you guys have to work with in case a family's utilities are getting cut off, or maybe they need furniture for their housing, whatever it is. You have to be the one who figures that out. Transportation, we've talked about that already. Legal stuff. Maybe you have a youth that wants to pursue emancipation. I encourage you to let a youth who wants to emancipate go through that process. Either halfway through, they'll realize that that's not for them, or maybe it might be for them. Um, you know, Restraining orders, all the different good stuff. So these are all the things that I think about within the school system. Our kids might even need a place to study, and we kind of covered that just a little bit. Oops. But again, if you can make this better, please do. Let me send a message to my next meeting. Okay. So again, you want to make sure that you're assessing their needs. And then I like to pretend like you guys are always going to win the lottery, because that's my hope, is that any of us wins the lottery. And of course, you guys are like, I'll see you later. We're not going to peace out, right? But I know that you care enough about these students to make sure that whoever's taking your place knows what these kids need, what you guys have already done with them, maybe what works, what doesn't work, whatever. You care enough that you want to make sure that whoever steps into your place is able to do what they need to do for these students. So you don't have to use this sample action plan, but please feel free to use it if you like it. You need to write it down. Okay, again, that's because you're winning the lottery. Whoever's moving in next needs to know how, what worked, what didn't work, who was doing what. You don't want 3 people trying to do the same thing. And if you don't like this and you make a better one, again, please send it back to me so that I can use that instead. That's always my secret goal. All right. You guys are small schools. You probably won't have a ton of McKinney-Vento kids if you have a small group. But so that would give you guys the luxury of following up with our families, our students every 2 weeks. Just checking in. Hey, how's it going? I noticed that you've slipped in math some. Is there something I can do for you to help you get back, back into good grades with your math, or you've been missing school more lately? What can I do? What's worked? What didn't work? So that amend your plan if that's what you need to do to make things right again for that student. All right, and then step 7 is always making sure that, so the school year runs July 1st to June 30th. So July 1st, everything that we've just discussed, you're going to start completely all over again. You're never just going to roll one student over into the next school year. You're going to reassess them that next school year and make sure that they're still needing McKinney-Vento services. And even though, I did it in 5 minutes, I really did it. So if you need to reach out to me, you have some questions, please feel free to do that. I love being able to talk with you guys. That's probably one of the best parts of my job, making sure that you guys are on the right track. I gave you a lot of information. There's a really good chance that you'll also be like the families, like, now, what does she say? I need to refer back to that. So I'm going to send this to Missy right now so that she can share it with you all. And feel free to reach out to me anytime. And just so you know, I'm validating data every 40 days. So I'll be looking to see if those numbers change or not. Oh, here we go. And if I'm seeing that you guys never identify McKinney-Vento student, I'm going to see what's going on with you guys and possibly audit you at
Right.
some point, because you got to have a McKinney-Vento student somewhere along the way.
It's
Yeah.
statistically impossible.
Yeah. All right. Do you have any quick questions that you want to discuss, or you're like, want this lady to stop talking for a while, probably? Whichever way you want to go with it, I'm here for you. Or not here for you if you're going to go the other way. And please excuse my Mondayness. It's just Monday morning. So.
All right, well, thanks so much, Dana, and
you.
I'm sure they'll be able to reach out to you if they want to. So thanks.
All right. Thank you so much. Bye.
Take care. Okay, so let's take a break. Let's come back at 10:45. That work? Okay, I'll pause the recording. It is very different than what anybody thinks of, because we tend to focus on the word homeless, and we think that that's somebody
Yeah.
living,
In a box
out
on
in the
the side of the
wild,
road,
and
yeah.
it's not, and it really, there are plenty of homes across our state where people don't have running water.
Yeah.
Just don't have
So
running
one of
water.
the questions would be though, is that, and I don't know how it would work, is that, particularly in a really small school like ours, somehow partnering with the school district to kind of, so we're not duplicating everything.
So I think that it's reaching out to them and saying, asking their McKinney-Vento person, like, how could we coordinate with you?
Yeah.
What you don't want to be doing is having somebody enroll and fill out paperwork and saying, yes, they're experiencing one of those things, and you going, oh, you should go to Mora Public School.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to do that. Like, they want
No.
to choose you, you wanted them to choose you. But they may be willing to coordinate with you with, we've got all these resources, so you don't have to, find the resources. But yeah, you
Yeah,
don't,
and
you definitely
actually,
don't want to make it seem like you're pushing anybody out.
right. Well, now, the other thing is that there's probably so many things that we should be coordinating with them. Not just that, the transportation, the food, they're just, I don't think we sit down with them until we really have a better idea of all the things that we could be doing together. Cause I
Yeah,
don't want to go
yeah.
there every week. It says, oh, by the way, could we also be working with you on?
Right, exactly. Yeah, yeah. So, all right, I'm gonna go back to what I was presenting. Okay. So we were talking about Inspira STEAM Academy's two goals that they had proposed, and we had finished talking about those. But anyway, I think both teams wrote goals that can be negotiated. They just need a little bit more work if that's what you guys want to still continue with as we move forward, or if you know, think about other types of things that you want to propose. The thing with mission goals to keep in mind is you want the mission goal data to hopefully support your academic framework in a positive way and really help quantify why your school and its mission should continue to exist. Now, there are schools that you know, their annual report, you'll see that they are not achieving their mission goal this past year. So that can happen. Again, it's the focus that the commission always has is on what are the adult actions that the adults are taking to try to fix issues. Everybody's wants the kids to be proficient and to be at or above grade level. Everybody wants that. You're going to have varying degrees of success. It's not a terrible thing to not be showing progress. What it could mean that your focus is not quite where it needs to be for the kids, or there's some barriers that you hadn't anticipated. Or it could just be that, you know, the way you're measuring it isn't quite the data that you need. But again, you wanna work through something and say, you know, if you're doing your renewal report in 5 years, your new renewal application, you know, we thought that providing our students with, you know, we thought that our kids would be able to demonstrate mastery in Spanish and English communication skills appropriate to their developmental stage. But you know, on further assessment, we did not appropriately determine this category of students' developmental stage, and so they did not progress as much as we thought they did. You know, or they progressed more than they thought they did because we had them at the wrong developmental stage or something like that. You know, so there can be reasons why you haven't achieved something that are completely valid. It's not going to hurt your school. The thing that hurts your school is when you withhold data that, you know, you're not proud of. And then, so say over a 5-year contract term, you know, you don't report on something for a couple of years, and then the 3rd year you do, oh, we did great, so we're going to report on it. What that looks to the commissioners like is that you were sitting around twiddling your thumbs for the first two or 3 years and not doing anything. So it's okay to be working on progress, not achieving it, but the adults are all trying to figure that out. And they're tracking and they're talking and they're taking actions that they hope will cause improvements. That type of activity is not going to fit neatly into 5-year charter terms, right? It's gonna live and flow with the school. And so it's just really critical. So head administrators thinking about how they're going to report out to the board, when they're going to report out to the board. You know, you definitely want to have an end of year report, but what kind of mid-year reporting do you want to be doing to your board so that your board can maybe say, ask questions or provide guidance around, you know, more resources or other activities that the school can be doing to eliminate barriers and such. So keep all those things in mind as you're developing your school. Oh, for crying out loud. Okay. So all of this is going to be tracked and reported, like I said, annually. There are reporting templates for the academic option 2. I don't have any examples of those to show you because frankly, some of them are still kind of under development. So again, you guys are in a better position in that you're going to be able to be the beneficiaries of schools already going through this process while we work out the kinks. But in the meantime, I don't feel comfortable talking to you or showing you any of those reporting templates. Frankly, I don't understand them yet. And I don't know that they are fully understandable, if that makes any sense at this point in time. But I can show you the mission goal data reporting. So again, thinking about, you know, what we're capturing, the kids are better off by attending our school. You want your data to be able to be disaggregated if necessary. Most people are giving us the data by grade level. But you should be able to, for your purposes, it's going to be helpful if you can say, you know, not only that, but the students who are English language learners we see an added boost in their academic outcomes. So again, thinking about any data should be really data that is helping you tell the story of your school and what's happening at your school. And they really don't care about any inputs. They don't want you to be reporting. I mean, they care about it, but they don't want you to be reporting on it. It's all student outcomes. So they don't want to know, you know, we've had in the past mission goals where the focus was on kind of like what the school was providing and not so much what the kids will get out of it. And that's where the meat of the measuring is, what the children are getting out of it. So this is in part what the mission specific goal tracker data looks like. This is the main tab basically. And as you can see, although it is hard to see on this, and we'll be looking at it closer up to sections of it, but I will be generating a mission specific goal data tracker for each of you. And I will be customizing the grades to match the grades that you're going to be serving. So looking at this in closer view, you know, you'll have your school name, your mission, your goal. This is a tracker you're going to be making copies of and reporting to us annually. So like for you guys, if you have a start date of next summer, the first academic year you would be reporting out on would be June of 2027, right? So the 26-27 school year or fiscal year 27. So the top of that is going to have that kind of basic information. It's kind of duplicated because there's another tab with your school's name on it as well. We'll want the name of the assessment that's being done. So some schools like are using a particular social emotional assessment, or they might be using they might be using, they can use an assessment that they've created. So like New Mexico School for the Arts, I think, has a rubric that they have for how they're going to evaluate, student dance activity type of thing. So we need the rubric of how you're going to be, assessing something if it's school created or lesser known, shall we say. We also need to know how often you're going to be assessing the mission success. Are you doing a beginning of year assessment and then a middle year and an end of year? Or are you just doing it at the end of the year? What's the plan? And then that definition of how students successfully meet the goal. So we'll have all of that on the form. Then we'll have the targets. So like this is, you guys presented something, you came up with, 80% of the students will do X, Y, Z, and that's great. The targets is that next part of, so, what's the range of the success, so if 80% of the students are going to score possible points, how many of the students at the school are going to need to do that in order to exceed, in order to meet? If we do this right, if we work with you and get the mission goal template written well, your contract negotiations will likely be easy and really just focused on negotiating these numbers. So like in the past, we've had a school say, 95% of the students will get 80% or better. And the commissioners might say, well, that's a little bit high. We think 95% is a little bit too ambitious. Let's say 90%. And you guys will go, yeah, that works for us. Sometimes, a school will come and say 80% of the kids have to do this thing in order for us to exceed. And they'll say, that's not really rigorous enough. So when it comes to the negotiation part, that's typically what we want to shoot for, is that you're really just negotiating these targets. Not that we're, saying we don't like that you're going to be measuring that. We want you to measure something different. So hopefully we'll get you guys to that stage, so that you have a smooth contract negotiation. And then there's this bottom part of the template that I will customize. There are multiple tabs in this Google document, and the goal is for the other tabs. So we would have a kindergarten tab, a first grade tab, a second grade tab, that those tabs, which is be where you would put the data, would feed into this this tab. And FAY stands for full academic year. When it comes to negotiating your mission goals, we do not have an expectation that you're going to be having measurable progress on around a mission goal with a student who isn't with you for a full academic year. So typically the way we write that language is by saying students enrolled on the 40th day and the 80th day, or 40th and 120th day, so that, if you have a student who joins you at the beginning of the school year but leaves in November, you're not going to count them because they were there for the 40th day, but they weren't there for the next, count day. Or if you have somebody who joins you late in the year, right? So we're not having an expectation that those kids are going to be captured here. So we do have people who have developed different different tabs for, oh, I don't have the tabs. So on the other tabs, we want to have, you can have whatever information that you want on there, but we don't want to have student names. You have to have some type of way of identifying the kids. So that's not going to be a way for a member of the public to look them up and figure out who you're talking about. So not their student ID, not their name. But you know, at the school, you're going to have maybe the kids all listed out by their student ID, but then their ID for the mission goal is going to be, you know, you're just going to number them 1 through whatever. And so basically if you have a key and if we come and we say, well, we need to know who this one student is. I don't think we would need to do that, but if we did, you would have a key to be like, I know that student 1 on this list equates to Missy Brown, but that's not anything that would be transmitted to the Public Education Commission and not made public. So the goal needs to encompass at least 85% of your identified students. Your identified students means the students who are at your school for a full academic year. If fewer than 85% of those students are identified, you will be given a does not meet rating. So again, thinking about using your mission goal as a way to fortify, bolster the deep meaning that your school has to your community, I think is a good mindset to have. You really want, it's like, you know, Albuquerque Aviation Academy, when you hear those kids talk about why they're at the school and what they're doing, and particularly the pilot students, you know, it's really impactful. And so, you know, you guys are both proposing very impactful schools, bilingual education, you know, just thinking about like, what do you want? You want take this child who's got really limited options in traditional public school world and maybe life in general, and you want them to be shining examples in your community. So, you know, what does that look like? How do you get there? How do you help that student achieve those things? And thinking about that through your mission goal and how you can track that is really impactful. Okay. Any questions about mission goal? I mean, again, you don't need to be an expert. You're not going to be doing it alone. I don't even really feel like we have to do a whole lot of massaging to what you guys have already put in your applications. You just need to talk with your team about, you know, some like, what do we think it would take? We should propose for exceeds and meets, are we happy with what we proposed in our application?
See, will this be one of the deliverables that we need to upload? Not for November, right?
No, so it's not really, you will have to say for your November checklist which academic option you're interested in. I think it's in your November checklist. And it can change, you can change your mind. But you can't, you have basically contract negotiations is then, it's gonna be harder for you to change your mind after that. So, we do ask you to tell us, I think for the November checklist, which academic option you're interested in. But like I said, as we went through this last year, you know, Sacramento School of Engineering and Science chose option one. And, I had gotten confusing information from the Public Education Commission, but once that school made that choice, then the Public Education Commission's feedback became crystal clear. And they were like, no, 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 because it's a high school, we need to have more data. And because they only test 11th graders, that's not really fair to the school to just judge how well you're doing based on one grade. And so they had to choose option two. But with mission goal and the specifics of which assessment you want to use, that has to do with contract negotiations. That will be taking place in February or March. If I can get them to do it in March, I prefer March. But we'll be working with you intensely individually, probably in January, to make sure that the templates work for each of you. So your educational program is codified in the contract. It's changed over my time here in the public education department. And I approve of how it's changed. I like the way the commission has wanted to see it. So they really want it to be written in a way that is a guide to anybody coming and observing the school. What can they expect to see, right? So there's the overall kind of like, are you project-based learning? Are you Montessori? Are you STEAM? What is the overall of your school? So we need that, you know, that's a good place to start. So I kind of played around with this from your applications. So Collins Lake is planning to be an outdoor learning environment with nature-based curriculum, collaborative mentorship, learning, adaptive educational curriculum, project-based approach to learning, incorporating stories and histories and languages. And so when the charter schools division would come to do a site visit, this is telling the site visit team what they can be expecting. I always revert to Montessori in my explanations because that's the pedagogy I'm familiar with. And let's face it, I mean, everybody has opinions about what education is and what education should be. And so what we want this to be is like, somebody might have an idea of what a nature-based curriculum should be, right? Or like, and I might be like, well, this is what Montessori is. Montessori has to be this. And that's my opinion. And I go to somebody else's Montessori and I look around and maybe they've modified it slightly. I shouldn't be marking that school down for providing the educational program that they're providing because of my opinion about what it should be. And so this is supposed to be written as a guide to the charter schools division site visit teams to what they can expect when they come. Now, they're not necessarily going to see everything on one site visit, right? Like if you've got an outdoor learning environment with nature-based curriculum and the site visit happens to be set on a day when there's just a torrential rainstorm and the kids are all inside. You're not going to be marked down because we didn't see the children playing around in a torrential thunderstorm, right? So it's not like, well, we didn't see you do that, so you must not be doing it when it's something that isn't necessarily an everyday kind of activity, if that makes sense. So that's again, we would want to write a little bit more about what the collaborative mentorship learning method is and what the adaptive educational curriculum kind of is, if it's a particular adaptive educational curriculum, if it's named or something like that. We might want to, flesh this out a little bit more, but overall, it gives a good kind of synopsis of what somebody can expect. And I think like thinking about, you're promoting this to families. So thinking of from an advertising place, like how are you gonna like, what's that tear sheet kind of like elevator pitch of why, what kids are gonna get when they come to your school. So I also went and I thought like what schools kind of like does outdoor education. So this is what Aldo Leopold Charter Schools educational program in their contract looks like. And the site visit team can read this ahead of time, know what they're going to be seeing, or, mostly what they're going to be seeing in the classroom. So I did the same for Inspira. Personalized bilingual education, again, definitely would want to kind of flesh that out a little bit. And of course, the STEAM as well. That it's an interdisciplinary approach, inquiry-based, inclusive classroom model, tailored special education services, student-centered, culturally responsive curriculum. So again, we'd want to flesh those out a bit, but it's not bad. And I chose Sabe Sandoval Academy of Bilingual Education as an example of their educational program that's in their contract. So you can see Aldo Leopold had more things. Sabe has fewer, not a problem. It just depends on what your model is and what's in here though is what you're going to be kind of assessed on. So like if we went to Sabe for a site visit and there was like zero Spanish being done at all, and there were no Spanish posters or artwork or anything visible, the team might be like, wait a second, where's the dual language aspect of this school, right? So any questions on the educational program? Again, we'll work with you guys to take this and make it more like this. But I have limited understanding of this, so I can't always come up with everything for this. But I know that this is hard. It's hard for you guys to try to work on with everything else on the checklist that you're doing. And I know that it's hard to just start from scratch and look at a blank screen. So I always do try to come up with some either example or some basic language that you can then say, oh, that's terrible, Missy, it needs to be this, or I like that, but let's do this, let's add that instead, and stuff like that. And we'll just work on it together. Again, our aim is to make sure that you are successful and that you are prepared to have smooth negotiations. I don't want the commissioners to be looking at your educational programs and be griping or complaining at all. I want them to just like, oh yeah, that makes sense, love it, right? And I want you to love it and the charter schools division to love it, so we all know what we're looking at. So again, I am going to try to push for March for contract negotiations. I suspect because we have got a few of our renewal schools to be going through the renewal process in November instead of December, that we'll probably have a February and a March contract negotiations. But I do try to give everybody going through the process, both the transition schools, the renewal schools, and the implementation year schools, as much time as possible before the contract negotiations, because I want you guys to have smooth time with it. So during the process, you will address the mission, any material terms that limit charter activity. So this is where, you know, if your application proposed that you want to be a K6 and your community has been talking to you about really, we'd love of you to go through 8th grade, this would be the time to kind of negotiate that. You may or may not have to provide them with all of the things that they'll want if you're already under contract, right? Which would be petitions signed by parents saying, we really want to have the school go up to 8th grade. So, you know, not including Collins Lake because you're statutorily limited for your enrollment cap, but you know, Julia, if and Kat, if you're like, well, you know, we have an enrollment cap of 350 kids, but we've already got 400 families who sent us, you know, interest things. We would really like to have a higher enrollment cap. Again, this is the time contract negotiations to work on that. You don't have a contract, you don't have an old contract, you're working on developing the contract.
Missy.
And then yes.
Oh, no, so one of the things that I was a little confused on, and maybe I'm still confused, is that they approved us for K8. And I said, well, we're looking at K4, and Bridget or you or someone said, oh, that just gives you some more flexibility. Can you tell me what that really means?
Well, so when you're approved to be a K8, but you're going to start K4, what we're going to ask you for, I think it might be on the March or May checklist. What we're going to ask you for ultimately is what's your rollout going to be? So,
Yeah.
you know, your rollout could be, we're going to be K4 for the first 5 years, and then we're going to add 5th grade in our 6th year and so on. Or you could be like, we're going to be K4 for the first 2 years, and then we're going to roll to K5, 6, 7. Most schools will do, you know, they'll start with something like K4, and then if you were going to be opening in fiscal year 27, you know, then you'd say fiscal year 28, we're going to have a 5th grade, and then 29, we're going to have a 6th grade. That's usually how people roll out grades. If you were authorized for K4 alone, and in 3 years, you're like, we'd really like to have a 5th grade. You have to
Go back
fill
and
out, you have to fill out the amendment paperwork, present it to the commission, and they'll have to say yes or no. So what you've got by being approved K8 is you've got the flexibility that you will be able to add grades. So, because what your situation is that you know, you need to get opened
Yep.
and then you need to, and this is the thing I'm unclear about, like, at what point can you go and say, we'd like to increase our grades? And actually, I think that, I mean, increase our enrollment.
Yeah. No,
I
and
would
that's a whole
look
different.
at, I would look at the amendment form that we have on the website for enrollment cap increase, because it will have on there, like, how many years you'll need to be in operation before you can ask for that, and what types of things you need to ask for. But, so being approved for K to 8 means you don't have to come back and ask for grades 5, 6, 7, and 8.
But we
But you
still have the
will have to
enrollment
come
cap
back
issue.
and ask, you will have to ask for an enrollment increase. So
Yeah.
you're only having to come in and ask for one of the things instead of two of the things. So
Well,
that's the flexibility.
yeah, so the reason that it just, it gets interesting because, we've got a lot of parents who say, oh, I wish we could, my kid's gonna be going to 6th grade or something. Is there any way you could start off with more than just K4? And then I said, well, what if we had fewer kids in each class and we had more grades?
You have that flexibility, and this is the time to be collecting that kind of information so that you can, say that. But if you need to figure out, like, some limiting, are we gonna say, yes, we'll open up a 5th grade if we've got one student? Or do we need 5, or what, you can't, what the commission doesn't want to see is a school that says, we're gonna be a single grade school, so we're gonna have a 1st grade, a 2nd grade, a 3rd grade, and then say, well, we only had 1 3rd grader and 3 2nd graders, so we're gonna have a combined 2nd, 3rd. If a combined grade level is part of your material terms, explicit program requirements, you can do that. But if you've said, we're gonna be a 1st grade, a 2nd grade, a 3rd grade, like, it's, they really don't want you to use your enrollment numbers to drive your pedagogy. They want the pedagogy to drive the school. So they don't want to see that anybody's, and they will crack down hard on schools that kind of change that approach and start, having combined classes. Again, you can amend your contract and the material terms of your contract to say that you're going to be, multi-grade pedagogy. But
And we've got that. What gets tricky is again, you really don't know what your enrollment's going to be. And if you sit there and say, oh my gosh, we only have 20 kids and we've got a cap of 37, maybe we should open up additional grades because we've got all these other people that have been asking us about this. But by that time, the lottery's passed and the timing and all this stuff gets tricky. And then if you have K through 8, but you only got 2 teachers, okay, well, it was, we've got the ability to go, K1, 2 and 3, 4, but now are going to go K1, 2, 3, 4 and 5, 6, 7, 8. It just, everything changes.
right, so you have to, I would say that any kind of outreach you can be doing now to find out from your community,
Yeah.
and you can't make them sign in blood or anything like that. Like, they can turn around and be like, yeah, we changed our mind. But now would be the time to be figuring that type of thing out, and then say, when you're proposing your contract negotiations, if you do need to say, well, we really want to have a combined, like,
Yeah.
lower elementary and upper elementary type of thing, or we're gonna have, whatever way you guys choose to approach that, like, for staffing and the students and who's, who's teaching what grade.
Yeah.
Then you might be able to do something like that where you would have
Right.
not a full grade level of 5th graders, but start
Yeah.
at that point, so. I
Yeah,
think you
no,
want to have as many students as possible, as soon as possible.
Yeah, it opens up some new possibilities that makes things complicated. It'd be easier if it wasn't there.
Exactly, exactly. None of this is easy. Contract negotiations are done as a subcommittee of the commission, so they are not broadcast, they're not recorded. I can't show you a video of something. I have been in many. They're not scary. But you know, anytime you're in front of the commissioners, there's always gonna be a bit of a pit in your stomach. Just because, well, you care about your school, and so, and they have the strings that mean that your school can exist, so, it's understandable to be anxious and nervous, but we really do work hard to get you prepared so that, again, like really all you're kind of doing is negotiating those targets. So there have been schools that we prepared thinking that their mission was really good and the commission didn't like their mission at all. One thing they definitely don't want is they don't want your mission goals to duplicate what they will see in your academic data. So that's different, like the way Julia has hers written with you know, the bilingual literacy. Because that's not something, you know, the kids can take the state assessment in Spanish, but that doesn't, it's not, it's still just telling us about their math and their reading, right? It's not telling us about how good they are at being biliterate. And so that's kind of an academic goal that doesn't, that can be done in a mission goal because it's not captured in VISTAs. It's not captured in the statewide assessment. So both of you have conditions which I wish were better written. I don't know about how you guys feel about your conditions. But to me, when I look at them, I'm like, what exactly am I supposed to be collecting from you guys? But we will be addressing the conditions of your charter during contract negotiations, and some of, you know, some of your stuff you will already have been ticked off probably because that's what happened last year. Kind of some of it, they seem to want to give everybody a condition of basically like doing the implementation of your checklist. I'm like, why do you keep giving them that as a task? Because they have to do the implementation of your checklist. It doesn't need to be a condition. But anyway, it's not, we've had in the past where schools hadn't gotten everything in their conditions done by contract negotiations, and it was okay. The world did not end. So we will be working with you to make sure that the conditions get done. One of the things you will, by this time, by March and April, your board should be meeting regularly as a board and following all of the posting requirements and notification requirements. And so once the contract negotiations happen, which you should bring board members, it should be your head administrator and some of the board members. Again, we don't really want a quorum on either side because we don't want this to be a public meeting. But after the negotiations, then the contract and the performance framework and any of the scoring sheets, the mission goal reporting template or the academic goal reporting templates will have to be approved by your board. And then the board chair will sign it and we'll get that all done. So we should be getting all of that done and completed around the time that you're finishing up your May checklist. And then when we get to the June meeting, that's the commencement of operations vote. And so, I'll be reporting out periodically on your progress on the November checklist, the March checklist. For the June meeting, I'll be telling them about the May checklist, that everything's all good, and they will have their vote for commencement of operations. And then the next step after that is going to be the pre-opening site visit that we'll schedule with you guys. So let's see, we did have last year, I don't think I had any issues with my implementation year schools, but we definitely had issues with some of the renewal schools in having to basically chase after them to get the contract signed. You want your board to be in agreement with all of this. You do not want to get to a position where the board is not going to agree to sign the contract. They basically will be forfeiting the charter if that is the case. So this is not this is why you have a board members engaged. I know that we had one school transitioned to us a number of years ago, and the board was not happy with I think the educational program as it was written in the contract, because it didn't have enough of the language component that they wanted. And it really caused some major issues for everybody at the school and the charter schools division. So again, make sure that you are communicating with your board, with your potential head administrator, so that everybody's on the same page and everybody knows what is being negotiated in this contract and the performance framework. I think you guys are in a perfect position to be able to require that your board annually or biannual, whatever your time frame you guys want to do, review the contract, review the performance framework, to make sure that you're on track as a school of what's expected of you. This is the list of things that you are being held accountable for and will be monitored with. And so it shouldn't be a surprise to anybody. It just shouldn't be a surprise to anybody. So I'm not 100% sure that what again I need to provide, or you guys need to provide for your condition. I haven't been given any kind of like compliance condition document that they want. So hopefully just being able to provide that y'all have done the things that they've done through the implementation or checklist will be enough for them. And that is what I have for you guys today. So I will get the presentation to you and Dana's presentation to you. I was not able to get anybody else to meet with us today, but I knew I had a lot to talk about with the contract negotiations. So hopefully I tried to get school budget to come to this one. Hopefully I'll get them to come to the November training. Does anybody have, yeah, Kat, I was gonna just ask.
I just wanted to know, tomorrow for CES, we have that Excel and Elevate. since I don't have any staff or students, is it worthwhile for me to go the entire day tomorrow, or should I wait till next year?
I don't know. Anybody on CSD have a sense of that? I mean, I think unless it's taking you away from something else important, I would go just because next year you're gonna have students and staff and you're gonna be more stressed. So maybe
Okay.
now is the time to do it when you
Okay.
can just
But we're-
listen in and
Yeah, we're not obligated to use them though, right?
no, you're not obligated.
Okay, thank you so much. Sorry, I needed to
No,
Uh,
yeah.
ask. I
this
felt like I
is-
was asking my mom's permission. No, just kidding.
I mean, that's one of the things that I'm trying to figure out with the implementation of your checklist is, if if there's other entities out there that, there's a thing that you can go to, like with the Safe Schools plan, instead of having them come to one of our little sessions, you all will go to their sessions, and I think they have 4. They won't be until the spring. And so, our checklist item is kind of changed to like, what's the plan for who's gonna go to that? Because that's gonna be more thorough than them trying to condense that into something for you guys. So I try to find the things, but I would go to, and I don't know what email lists you're on yet. So when I get an email saying, hey, there's this thing, I want to send it on to you guys so that I know that you guys are at least being able to see any opportunities that are available to LEAs. Sometimes you run into the issue of like, well, I don't have a school ID number and I, need to attend, and just let us know and we can try to work with the bureau to see what you need to do in order to attend. But this is the time when you don't have staff and students to be learning as much as you can about how to be successful at PED with all of our different
Okay. Initiatives. Okay.
things.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
True Monday today.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I'm still on vacation, so I'm proud of myself for functioning to this level that I am already functioning. So
We're
But,
down to just 2 employees now, so you can only imagine. Lucy can fill you in.
yeah, yeah, I'm sure. So yeah, if you have any questions about other parts of the implementation of your checklist that you're confused about, I'm trying to remove things from the checklist that aren't needed since neither of you guys are high school or none of you guys are high schools. So if you do get something, a task that's assigned to an epicenter that you're confused about because it's not applicable to you, just reach out to me. But you can also just put, not applicable in the submission notes, and we'll see that. So, and then once so I need you guys to submit everything, whether it's a not applicable or what, like there needs to be something in there on November 1st. And then we'll be reaching out to you guys once we've reviewed everything to set up a meeting time. I don't know, Kat, if there was anything that you were going to be turning in for the November checklist, but you're not really bound to any checklist time.
You just
So
had my timeline that I sent to you that you needed.
Yeah.
And then I just need to update our governance board. Renee
Okay.
retired.
Right, but we'll still
Okay.
meet with you, but just it's not going to be this.
Okay, perfect.
It's different. It's just
Okay.
different.
Thank you.
So, all right. Anything else anybody has? All right, well, I hope you all have a great rest of your Monday. And it's snowing up here in Park City, and I get to pack up because we're leaving tomorrow. So see
you,
you
everyone.
all.
Bye, Missy.